It's 4 p.m. We're bringing developing news.
And the stories behind the headlines. This is Storycon. I'm Patrick Paez.
I'm Ed Lingao. Some stories you're watching this Thursday, December 19. VP Sara Duterte is facing her third impeachment complaint, this time filed by complainants from the Catholic Church and a group of lawyers from Mindanao. Grounds cited were betrayal of public trust and culpable violation of the Constitution. They also accused Duterte of bribery when she was DepEd secretary. President Bongbong Marcos says he is aware of the House Quad Committee's recommendation to file charges against former President Duterte and several others over drug war. He explained that the DOJ will now review the committee's findings and decide if charges should be filed.
And the president said the government is still in the preliminary stage of reviewing the request for clemency for Mary Jane Veloso. When asked about the matter, he said, and we quote, "Malayo pa tayo ron." Okay, Veloso arrived in Manila yesterday after 14 years in detention in Indonesia for drug trafficking.
And joining us today from the Philippine Star in Parañaque, the Editor-in-Chief, Ami Pamintuan. And Ami, kasama natin ngayon si Tito Patrick.
Hello, Ami.
Hi, Patrick. Hello.
Si Tito Ronald, ang ating Papa from Paris, may biglang emergency. May pinagsapan namin kanina. Mabuting anak pala siya.
Mabuting anak si Mabuting anak.
Oo, ulirang anak. Can you imagine?
A dutiful son.
There was a time when he was a child.
We can't imagine. Diba? Dutiful son, Ami. Which brings us to that question Ed had a while ago. Ano yung Bok? Tanong mo? Hindi ko. Parang may nanay pa pala siya.
Hindi ko nakasabihin eh. Nag-aalaga ng nanay.
A dutiful son.
Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? Diba? Bigla tuloy ako nahiya. Tawa ko yung nanay ko. Teka. Baka nakikinig nanay ko. Anyway. Anong developments? Ami, what's your big story for today?
Yung mga nabanggit mo rin, dagdagan ko lang yung dun sa impeachment. Yung palang yung kay Mary Jane Veloso. Sabi ni Bongbong Marcos, ibigay na lang daw sa legal, pag-aaralan pa daw.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, yun din ang sinabi ni Senator De Lima, dahil Laila De Lima, former senator, na medyo mahaba daw yung process niyan, minimum daw niya several months Then you have to file a formal application.
Wait, you're talking about yung charge na crimes against humanity? Ay, sorry.
No. I'm talking about Mary Jane Veloso. Ang dami, no?
Iba na ang daming kaso, no? Pasko, ang daming puro kaso
pinag-uusapan. Dagdagan ko yung crimes against humanity. May reaction lang sila, Senator Bato de la Rosa and Senator Bongo. Yan, reaction nila, Senator de la Rosa and Senator Bongo, nakahanda daw silang humarap dito sa local court kung yung crimes against humanity case, dito ifa-file. So they're just maintaining their stand na ayaw nila sa ICC. Pero kung dito daw, they will face the charges.
Bok, may yung reference dyan ng Quadcom is a 2009 law na pirmado ni GMA, yung RA 9851. Some interesting points lang doon. In particular, that might be applied, I say might be applied in the case of the former president. Number one, sa Section 10, may pananagutan ang mga superiors bilang principally criminally liable kung hindi nila na-control ang kanilang mga tauhan. At hindi sila tatag ng patakaran para hindi mangyari ang krimen. Isa pa ang Section 9 ba ito? Ang isang tao ay may pananagutan kung hindi lamang kung siya ang gumawa ng krimen, pero kung siya rin ang nag-utos o nag-udyok sa iba na gawin ng krimen.
It sounds very much like the ICC case.
Also principally liable. Ito yung connect sa ICC kung sakali. Ang Section 17 ng batas, maaring magbigay daan ng Pilipinas kung sakaling merong sinasawang investigasyon ang isang international tribunal.
So they can give way, even if there's a case here.
The wording is this, Philippine authorities may dispense with the investigation and prosecution of a crime if another court or international tribunal is already conducting the investigation or prosecution of the crime. That's Section 17. Dagdag doon, authorities, which means Philippines, may surrender, but operative word is may surrender or extradite suspected or accused persons in the Philippines to the appropriate international court.
Okay. Well, what's the impact of this, the fact that the Philippines is not a member of ICC?
It depends on your how you interpret kasi the paglabas natin sa ICC. Kasi di ba, the insistence of some is that even though we left the ICC,
That's the ICC position. That Philippines will still be held responsible for acts that were committed before the withdrawal.
and in a way, there's a Supreme Court decision that seemed to support that we are still under the jurisdiction of the ICC as far as
Pero Ed, ang ano pa rin dyan final word pa rin dyan will be President Marcos.
Of course. Yun nga That's why the operative word is may It's not will.
Optional yan dun sa batas
Oo. So in the end, it's a decision by the local authorities on whether or not to push Section 17 of RA 9851.
Yes. So siguro tanungin uli si President Marcos. Remember late last year, sinabi niya, understudy yung pagbalik natin sa ICC, remember? Hanggang ngayon naman, wala pang final word on that study.
In any case, that Quad Committee it's a recommendation. It's a recommendation. Everything
Even
will still
there,
depend on the executive branch of government.
Kung
Whether
Yes.
they will prosecute or they will turn him over to the ICC and all that. So,
Basta lang yun. Just some interesting points
rekomendasyon
sa
kasi
RA
ng Quad
9851.
ICC, di ba? ICC yung rekomendasyon ng Quad
ganun pa rin.
Di ba? Yun ang sinasabi nila. Kaya
okay.
kailangan, ang reaction ni President Marcos, pinag-aaralan na legal team natin. Pero ang rekomendasyon ng Quad, i-file sa ICC.
Anyway, you're looking at another channel, Balay, that opened up. They're not necessarily exclusive.
Is it another channel that has opened up, or is it simply the House weighing in on parang leaning on the administration, on the executive branch to allow this ICC trial to continue?
Because it's recommendatory. To allow the ICC. Well, this is a roundabout way of going towards the ICC kung sakali.
Baka dagdag pressure.
Kasi-
Dagdag pressure. Additional.
Malayo na narating ng ICC, di ba?
Ayun nga
Parang ano lang yun parang tama ka Ed na parang push lang yan, a nudge sa executive na mag-cooperate na tayo with ICC or something like that.
What has
Diba?
not
Kasi
come to
medyo-
pass, Ami, is that yung sinasabi ni Senator Trillanes na last quarter of the year, may arrest warrant o magkakatrial na and all that. But what the latest that we heard from the ICC officially on their website was that they were hiring translators.
In Filipino.
Malaking bagay yun.
Ano,
That's a
Filipino-
big signal. They were
Filipino
hiring
Cebuano.
translators
Ano ba,
in Bisaya
in
and in
Bisaya.
Tagalog. And these translators are supposed to accompany ICC investigators in questioning. So para marami pang gusto malaman ng ICC. So it would seem, based on that posting for vacancy or for the requirement for translators, is that baka matagalan pa ng konti. Siguro.
Well, I don't know how it works.
Field
pero-
translators is the word that they use. I don't know if these field translators will be used for the preliminary investigation and the file of the case or as part of the trial na.
Kasi remember, just a few weeks
Pwede
ago, ang marites ni Tito Ronald was may ICC group na nandito ulit a few weeks ago So, pabalik-balik.
Kaya kailangan nila ng translator, siguro.
Di ba nagkakaintindihan, ganun?
Hindi, mukhang pabalik-balik na.
Pabalik-balik
Labas-pasok naman yata sa Pilipinas
They just
Yung mga
come in and out quietly.
ICC personnel. Pero kailanganin nila ng translator para, especially for former President Rodrigo Duterte, kasi medyo pabalik-baliktad yung mga testimony niya actually pag tiningnan nyo.
Ay, kailangan nila
siya,
dyan,
tapos kakambyo
ang kailangan nila dyan si Atty. Sal at si Atty. Harry kasi may ibang klaseng translation na ginagawa nila Hindi lang literal
Lalo
translation.
Wala bang, I'm
Lalo
sure
na
merong app
nagkagulo
na
yan.
ganyan. Di ba?
Diba? It is not a translation that they do. It is a
Interpretation.
reinterpretation, we
Yan
might even
na nga.
say. Anyway.
Kasi medyo lumakas yung case nila for crimes against humanity. Remember, meron kang ganyang kaso, if it's systematic and state-sponsored, yung killings, lumakas yung case because of President Duterte himself. Meron siyang is too honest, o may
Yung mga
put
bitaw
in
niya.
mouth disease siya.
But then again, Bok, yung mga bitaw niya kasi dun sa committee, pakambyo-kambyo. So if you were a lawyer, you might play around with that na parang if he said this, then he said something different later on. How can you give more weight to the first statement and not any weight to the second statement? So, pwede maglaro ng ganun eh. But you know how lawyers
Kaya
are.
medyo mahihirapan yung translator dyan,
Another big story, is this matter of the budget. I think the president has communicated what seems to be his course of action. Of course, his sister, the super ate ng Pangulo, si Senator Amy Marcos, is suggesting na ibalik sa bicameral conference committee itong budget na ito. So I understand yesterday, curiously, there was a meeting outside of the palace across the Pasig River, doon sa Bahay Pangarap. Okay. It seemed to be a very small, tight and relevant group with the Finance Secretary, the DPWH Secretary in attendance, among others. Pinag-usapan din ang budget. In the DBM, si Secretary
DBM
Amena
Bersamin.
Pangandaman. So, na-curious ako DPWH Secretary was in that group, in that meeting. So, they are looking at the DPWH budget, which seems to have grown a lot.
By 288 billion.
Yes, parang
for the first time,
konti lang diferensya dun sa intindi ko, konti na lang ang diferensya dun sa DepEd budget or education budget, which constitutionally should be the biggest allocation in government.
Ay, the DepEd budget is much smaller. I think what you're referring to is the education sector budget.
Education sector.
Total. Kasama dito, CHED, at saka yung mga pang-state colleges and universities.
Marami kasi yun eh. Kasi the problem is...
Kahit nag-add, di ba, Ed, mas maliit pa rin ng konti. Di ba? Mas mababa pa rin siya ng konti dun sa 1.1 trillion ng DPWH.
Oo.
It depends kasi on
And to think, Bok, yung DepEd budget, strictly speaking, sweldo pa lang talaga ng mga teacher yan. It really goes to salary. Not much goes to, if you check it out, may DepEd budget for infra, but not much. Medyo maliit lang ata,
It depends kasi on how you do creative mathematics eh. Kasi if you total, for example, yung education, they call it education sector. Education sector budget, it's 1.05 trillion. If you total DPWH, solo lang siya, it's 1.03. So, malaki ng bahagya. Yung education sector.
Yung total.
Budget
yung lahat-lahat na yan.
Aggregated.
Okay.
However, kasi tinanggal doon sa DPWH total yung what they call convergence projects. I don't know what this means which is 82 billion. Pag sinama mo yung convergence projects, whatever that means, it's 1.1 trillion. So, mas malaki yung DPWH. Pati nga
Kasi
we don't
kung
know...
gagamitin nilang sector yan, sector by sector, ganun dapat ang computation, di ba? Kung ano yung pupunta mo sa public works, di yung sector na yon. Hindi lang DPWH. Kasi hindi pwedeng department to department yung isa sector. Bakit ganun?
Well, the problem kasi with the Constitution is the wording. It does not say education department has to have the highest priority. It just says education has
the sector.
Education.
It says education. Just that word, education. Not education sector, not education department, but education has to have the highest priority. So,
kahit mas maliit ng konti, sabihin na natin mas maliit ng konti yung sa DPWH, bawal pa rin magdagdag from the proposed expenditure ng executive.
That's another constitutional provision.
Bawal pa rin yan. Napakalaki ng dinagdag nila. And apart from DPWH, ang laki-laki ng dinagdag sa unprogrammed appropriations na suggested ng executive. Bawal pa rin yun.
Yeah.
Na ang ibig sabihin ng unprogrammed appropriations, Ami, is that subject to availability of funds o matutuloy lamang kung may pera?
Subject to the availability of funds. Kaya nga in-impound nila for this year yung mga quote-unquote savings ng mga government corporations para mapondohan yung unprogrammed appropriations nila.
Kasama na.
Ngayon,
Dapat.
balak na naman nilang
This year, kasama
Yes,
dapat dyan
dapat.
yung pondo ng PhilHealth. Right?
Yes.
Na napigilan natin ng Supreme
Ang
Court.
napigil lang, remember ang napigil lang yung PhilHealth. Hindi natin alam kung ano nangyari dun sa mga savings, quote-unquote, ng ibang GOCCs kung napunta sa unprogrammed appropriation.
Ami, yung
Kasi
reference
ang
mo kanina,
PERO lang yung di ba? Ang nasuspindi lang yung third and fourth tranches lang ng PhilHealth. Paano yung sa ibang GOCC?
Ami, yung reference
Diba?
mo kanina, that's Article 6, Section 25 ng Constitution. Congress may not increase the appropriations recommended by the President as specified
Yes.
in the budget. Yun ang reference mo
Kaya,
kanina.
exactly.
The other one is Article 14, Section 1. Nakalagay na dapat highest budgetary priority ang education.
Education.
Education,
Yes.
yeah. No
Pero
reference
yun
if
na nga
it's education
sinasabi ng
department or
mga
sector.
kung gagamitin mong comparison yung public works sector ay DPWH lang, the department itself, di gawin mo din yun. Ikukumpara mo yan dun sa budget ng Department of Education. Pwede mo siguro isama yung CHED kasi higher education yun Sa TESDA siguro, yun lang.
So,
yun. Paano yun? Maliit pa rin.
Ang DepEd itself is 782 billion, ang CHED is 34
Yes.
billion, ang SUCs or state colleges is 127 billion.
Sige,
yung
magkano
malalaki.
yun?
Ay, pag-mathematics mo pa naman ako, ikaw naman, no?
May laptop ka, gumamit ka ng computer na laptop mo.
Baka demanding ng mga tao dito. Titingnan natin. Okay. 782 plus, 34. Itatanggalin ko na yun, i-round up ko na. Plus 127. Okay. 943.
Okay. I guess, Bok, what needs to be said is that malaki yung binawa sa DepEd budget. And also, hindi masyado
Yes.
napapag-usapan, malaki yung binawa sa Agri Department.
Ay, oo.
Na medyo
The priority.
mabigat yun because this is supposed to be an administration that had a heavy bias for agriculture. I mean, it's supposed to be a Marcos legacy, yung Agri, no?
Yes.
Kaya nga at the outset, naging concurrent Agri Secretary si President Bongbong Marcos, and yet ang laki ng binawas doon sa agri budget. Now what happens now to all those pronouncements about reforms, ayusin lahat ng mga problema sa agricultural sector, etc., na medyo malaking binawas. Ngayon yung mga binawas na ito, hindi ito mababalik. Kasi kung ano yung pinasa ng Kongreso at sinumite sa palasyo, ang pwede lang gawin ng presidente ngayon dyan is either bawasan ulit, pero hindi niya madadagdagan o hindi niya maibabalik yung pondo o budget na talagang that the executive branch has earmarked for those departments and those.
Kasi kung magbabawas siya through line item veto, tatanggalin mo ang linya, kung tinanggal na yung budget mo, kahit magtagal ka ng linya, hindi mo dadagdag.
The veto, he said he will veto, but the veto will have to happen elsewhere. Because there's nothing to veto anymore with natanggal na sa DepEd at sa
or
Agri,
just go for
So the veto, it bears to be to see, saan gagawin yung mga veto nito? Anong mga budget ang babawasan ng presidente? Now, in that meeting yesterday, the DPWH secretary was there, so we can infer maybe, or we can probably speculate a bit that
Yung 1.13
they're looking at certain budgets within the DPWH, which, strictly speaking, if you go compare department to department, has the biggest budget.
Ito mga pwedeng buwasan, Amio. Kasi ito, ang laki ng tinaas dun sa BICAM ang budget ng House of Representatives. Inakyat siya ng BICAM, sa BICAM to umakyat. Inakyat siya ng BICAM by 17.3 billion.
Nadagdagan.
Nadagdag. From 16 billion as originally logged in the NEP, the National Expenditure Program na proposed ng Malacanang for next year's budget, 16 billion yon. Nagdagdag ang BICAM ng 17.3. So now their total currently in the BICAM.
Siguro, Bok, we probably need to walk back. People are watching and listening dito sa the basics parang of the budgetary process. Every year may sinusumite yung yung executive branch
Usually
na tinatawag na National Expenditure Program. Yan, di ba? Nandito lahat yung mga gagastusin ng bawat sangay ng gobyerno, including the executive and the legislative and the judiciary.
Nag-meeting muna yung mga department heads with DBM and Malacanang. Ito yung gusto naming budget.
Para sa lahat. Para sa lahat.
DBM will collate.
Ang trabaho ng executive is sila yung magbalangkas ng budget. Ang trabaho ng Kongreso ay
Perus.
busisiin, bawasan, pero hindi dagdagan.
Oo,
Yun.
nasa
Hindi pwede.
Malinaw yun.
sa konstitusyon.
Pwede sila magbawas, pero hindi pwede dagdagan. Ang nangyari, nagbawas tapos nagdagdag sa iba ata ba?
Dagdag bawas. Ibang klase.
Nagdagdag bawas.
Okay.
Ang nangyari, nagdagdag bawas.
Congress inakyat ng 17.3 billion. Ang Senate inakyat ng 1.1 billion. Again, BICAM lang to hindi to sa plenary kasi as a
Paliwanag mo na,
plenary,
Bok. BICAM. Ano ibig sabihin ng BICAM?
Sa plenary kasi, di ba, may House, nagpasa ng version niya, Senate, nagpasa ng version niya, magkaibang version usually. So, ang BICAM,
Magmi-meeting yung dalawang kamara.
may kinatawan ng House tsaka Senate, magmi-meeting small committee, ang mga kinatawan nila, that's the bicameral committee. They will put together
They will reconcile what
Yeah.
the differences in their versions of the budget.
para isang bersyon na lang ang pag-uusapan. At ito yung napag-uusapan nilang bersyon na ibang-iba doon sa pinasa nila sa...
Singit lang, but traditionally, nagko-cover pa ako ng Senado noon many moons ago. Traditionally talaga, pagdating sa BICAM niyan, Ami, alam mo to, no? Medyo panibagong budget na nangyayari. Panibagong...
Kaya nga.
Yun, pagbabudgeting ulit ang nangyayari.
The third chamber.
At dyan nangyayari tinatawag nilang singitan or dagdagan or whatever. It's a haggling.
May comment dyan si President Marcos ngayon, yung singitan mo. Sabi ni President Marcos, they will be looking into the insertions. Yan ang statement niya ngayon.
Well,
Pag-aaralan daw nila yung mga budget insertions.
well, Ami, kasama sa insertion ng budget ng Malacanang
Yes, oo nga
Inakyat ng BICAM
Yung ano.
by
Kaya nga,
5.4
titignan
billion.
nila.
It's an increase of what? It's an increase of 50% kasi 10 billion plus na nirecommend ng Malacanang for itself. Congress in its infinite wisdom increased it by 50%, so it's now 15.8.
Para walang angal.
Oo. Para
walang angal.
spread the joy. In the meantime, ito nga sasabi ni Patig binawasan ang Agri Department ng 20 billion. Ang DOLE ng 18 billion. Ang DOTR ng 16.6 billion. Ang DepEd ng 11.5 to 12 billion. So yun.
Napunta sa AKAP.
Well, AKAP ang
Napunta
mga...
sa AKAP. At na-approve si AKAP, ha? BICAM yun. BICAM yung AKAP. Doon na-approve.
Ay, ito pala, Bok, sorry, I forgot. DSWD, ang laki ng bawas, 95 billion. 95 billion. Bagamat nagbuwas ng 95 billion sa DSWD, nagdagdag naman sila sa isang DSWD program tungkol sa ayuda. Kung saan
May control sila.
Kung saan may papel ang mga... Napakabad din yun.
yung may control, although sabi ng DSWD, dapat walang control kahit sinong politiko. 21 billion for the House, 5 billion for the Senate. Di ba? Pero ang nag-announce niyan yung mga lawmaker, hindi DSWD.
But I can imagine it's not going to be in black and white doon sa BICAM budget na 21 versus 5. I can imagine.
In-announce kasi nila
Yeah, but I can imagine it's going to be a gentleman's agreement na I don't think that's something that they can put in the in the budget. Na ito yung,
Sila nag-announce nun
I know.
And technically speaking, this money doesn't go to the senators or the congressmen. The way this works is that what's the best word?
Earmark.
Earmark.
Yeah, but
Pork barrel. The money does not go to them, but they earmark.
okay,
Bawal yun.
let's use a less malicious word, for example. Di ba? Parang ito yung
Bagay.
allocation na pwede nilang ipamigay. Parang ganun yun, di ba? Sa ngalan, hindi naman sa ngalan nila dahil bawal pa rin yun.
Notika, hindi nila pwedeng pamigay. Mga guys sa DSWD.
Well,
They cannot hand over.
hindi, sila lang
Binawal yan ng
taga-abot.
Supreme Court.
Parang ganon.
May
Right?
Supreme Court ruling.
Sabi ng DSWD, hindi
May
na pwede yun.
Supreme Court ruling against that. You cannot earmark after the budget. You cannot earmark projects after the budget has been signed, has been Hindi pwede yung post-budget earmarking.
Post-budget,
Yan ang nature ng yan eh. Yung ginawa nilang yan. Bawal yun.
So, saan galing yung hatian, Bo?
Inanaw si Grace po.
Si Grace po mismo nagsabi na.
Si
Inannounce
Grace po
niya.
was the head of the Senate BICAM committee, the BICAM delegation. Ito sa soundbite eh.
Candidly.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh.
And you'd remember, in November, inalmahan ni Senator Amy Marcos yung AKAP kasi sabi niya puro mga congressman lang ba't puro mga congressman lang nandyan?
So, meron na rin ang senador ngayon.
Yun nangyari. 5 ang sa Senador, 21 ang sa Congress. So,
Which is, in a way,
it's a
24 lang naman yung senador.
so it's a more democratic.
It's more it's socialized. Socialized yung hatian nila. Kasi 300 plus yung congressman nga naman, yung mga senador, 24 lang.
So
malaki pa rin yung 21. Yung 5 malaki.
Oh yeah, for 23 sila ngayon, di ba? But at least happy sila.
Yes.
Yan eh, that's an election budget eh. Kasi kahit
Ito
hindi
si Ami
naman
talaga,
pupunta sa'yo yung pera, sasabihin ng mga senador, may 5 billion kami, hati-hati kami. They can earmark, sasabihin sa AKAP, in-endorse namin to. Pagdating niyan, pag distribute siya, pwede sila maglagay doon ng mga tarpaulin, di makontrol, Pwede maglagay ng tarp, streamer, nandun yung mukha nila, nandun yung pangalan. Sasabihin, mamimigay tayo, kami ang nag-endorse niyan. Di naman mapigilan, matatapon ba yun ng DSWD? Di ba tinanong natin yan kahapon? Di naman nila makontrol. Saka kahit humarap sila on stage, maitutulak ba yun ng mga taga-DSWD? Kung nga kayo dito, hindi kayo pwede mamigay ng cash.
Bok, pakita ko lang Ito storya ng Philippine Star noong May 15, 2024. DSWD will not allow politicians to distribute AKAP cash aid.
Yes.
Who is being quoted there, Bo?
Si Secretary Gatchalian.
Okay.
Yeah. Inulit niya yan.
Do you have an
ngayon
exact quote?
Basahin natin.
Inulit niya yan.
Inulit
After Grace
ka
po
niya,
announced, after Grace po announced na may 21 billion at 5 million, inulit siya ni Secretary Gatchalian na no role ang mga politicians sa pamimigay ng AKAP.
Ito quote, and we open with the quote, "They cannot do the actual distribution that is against our protocol," he said over radio station DZRH. The DSWD disbursing officers are not allowed to hand over the assistance to any politician for distribution. And we quote again, "Only our disbursing officers can hold the money because they are accountable for that." Unquote.
Okay, that's coming from DSWD Secretary Gatchalian.
Tatabi lang naman yung senador doon sa DSWD na namimigay tapos magpapakuha ng picture. Sige nga.
Wala akong sinasabi. I'm just quoting ano ba naman?
Hindi kailangan. Although kahit lagay niya doon sa likod niya yung taga DSWD. Pagdating sa picture taking, saka pagharap sa tao.
Kasi we were telling Asik Dublao ng DSWD kahapon.
Hindi mo naman pwede itulak yun.
Ma'am, all we did was do a simple Google search. AKAP distributed by.
And all the images that came up were?
Images and stories and press releases.
Were politicians distributing?
And video as well. Congressmen, mostly for AKAP.
Mayors.
Senators. Well, mayors kasi dalawang AKAP eh. AKAP is LGU distribution and direct distribution by DSWD. So, ang LGU
and AKAP is not conditional, no, Bo?
No. Walang condition. Walang condition. No. It's just poorest of the poor. Ang AX yung you have to show you're in a crisis situation.
Okay. Tapos yung 4-piece na original sa 4-piece na naman nagsimula to. Ito yung poorest of the poor. At conditional yan. Kailangan parali mo yung anak mo. Kailangan mag-health center ka. Tinututukan ng mga social workers yung mga recipients ng
50 billion.
4-piece. Yun po yung binawasan. At saka itong 4-piece yung pinuri ng World Bank,
Oo.
which is a great way of breaking out of the cycle of poverty for
Kasi that's
many of these poorest of the
That's
poor.
a system that's medyo been polished already na natanggal na yung mga politiko from the scene. Kasi diretso na yun sa card eh. Di ba, Bok? Diretso na yun sa
ATM.
It's ATM.
You get your cash from the
Oo,
ATM.
pipila na lang yung mga tao sa ATM, hindi sila pipila sa politiko. So, yun ang binawasan ng 50 billion. But anyway,
And then AKAP is it's a dole out, it's a handout.
it's basically a dole out.
It's a dole.
Para sa mga kapos, ano yun, ayuda para sa kapos ang, ano yun,
Kita.
Ang kita program.
Ang kita program. Ayuda para sa kapos ang kita program. Yung AICS yun, yung kasalbinyag libing.
Huwag mo tawagin
KBL.
ganun.
yung AIX, yung
others,
assistance for individuals
In a crisis
situation.
In
Yeah.
crisis situations, yun. Kasalbinyag libing yun.
So parang
Na ano din,
with all these ayuda programs, we're like a socialist country already.
Welfare state. Welfare state na wala nga lang tayong pera.
Welfare state tayo, di ba?
Well, by itself naman, you can debate endlessly naman about yung the pros and cons of giving out ayuda or doleouts. That's one discussion altogether. But the other discussion, of course, that needs to be talked about more is sino pumapronta para magbigay ng ayuda at sino
Yan naman.
nakikinabang. Ibang usapin ba yun? Ibang usapin ba yun? Kasi di ba, the World Bank has looked at the Brazil model and said that this applies to the Philippines. You can give a dole out and it
Only for the
helps.
poorest of the poor. I did
poorest
a
of the poor,
report on that back many years back when it was still new and it was lauded by the World Bank. It was supposed to be for poorest of the poor. And by definition of poorest of the poor, nakausap kay mga DSWD, social workers, ito yung mga nakatira sa kalsada, nasa kariton, mga nasa sidewalk, mga pamilyang talagang who could not for generations break out of the cycle of poverty. So the intervention was needed so that to allow them to break out of the cycle of poverty. Why? First, getting education for their children. And
Yes.
And
ensuring that the
services.
next generation, their infants, their babies, their children, get good health care. Parang gano'n. So yun yung intervention na ginawa ng 4-piece program, ito conditional cash transfer, kung tawagin. Conditional, ibig sabihin, may nakataling kondisyon.
In fact, I remember din
And it was a good program.
yeah, I remember
And-
DSWD was proud to announce na they have case studies of AKAP of 4-piece beneficiaries who have graduated.
And it's not supposed
Yes,
to be that
marami
big,
na.
Bok, Pero nangyari,
Marami
kunyari,
na.
for
They
example,
are
yung
supposed to
AIX,
graduate,
pinambili ng iPad, for example, ng mga
kasi
estudyante,
isang
nilagay sa online sabong, pinantaya, and all that. Yun yung nangyayari dito. Pinambili ng cellphone, and all that. That's not the original intent.
Kasi parang pamasko
of,
yan isang bagsakan
ayuda.
Unlike yung 4-piece, it's a monthly thing. So kung masinop ka, then you will program it into
Tsaka nakabantay yung mga social workers ng DSWD.
Pwede nga binawasan. Well, anyway, let's be happy na lang. It's the Christmas season. It's a season of sharing. Okay.
And giving.
Yung 4-piece, kinopya natin yan sa Brazil.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It
Yan
was,
ang model
ang biggest backer niyan originally was the World Bank. At ang isang pinaka-stringent condition ng World Bank, hindi dapat makialam ang politiko dun sa program.
Right.
From the identification of the beneficiaries to the handing out of the aid, to the inspection of kung paano ginagamit ng beneficiaries yung pera, kailangan walang politiko. Yun ang isa nilang kondisyon. Sinabi nila, kapag yan napasukan ng politika, alis kami. We will stop co-financing sila.
And one of the more brilliant policies to come out of the Arroyo administration,
Yes.
tinuloy-tuloy, pati ng Pinoy administration, ng Duterte administration. But with every administration, I think, ang nagiging problema is nagiging parang
Yes.
nai-institutionalize yung ayuda, yung 4-piece, to the point na ngayon, bigayan na lang talaga ng bigayan. Yun.
Oo. Hindi siya dapat gano'n. Dapat may limited siya.
At dumami yung
lifespan.
mga ayuda. They did not factor in the Filipino ingenuity into the picture. Nagawa ng paraan maipasok yung... Anyway, mag-cut na nga tayo. You're watching Storycon News. We just need to take a break. We'll be right back.
We've got the developing news and the stories behind the headlines. Welcome back to the Store Conference. I'm Patrick Paez.
I'm Ed Lingao, and of course with us, aming pamintuan of the Philippine Star. As we reported earlier, VP Sara Duterte is now facing a third impeachment complaint. Hingi tayong detalye kay News 5 correspondent Marian Enriquez. Marian, so ano ang nature nitong third impeachment complaint at uusad na ba?
At saka sino? Sino ba to, Marian?
Ito nga, mag-alas 12 nga kaninang tanghali, nung dumating nga dito yung grupo, naghain sila ng 3 impeachment complaint laban kay Vice President Sara Duterte. Yung mga complainants, mga pari mula sa Diocese of Novaliches, Order of Carmelites, at Congregation of Mission. Meron ding mga non-government organization na Stand Up for God, Konsensya Davao, at Stop Corruption Philippines, at grupo ng mga abogado o yung Union of People's Lawyers in Mindanao. Yung mga kongresistang mag-endorso nga nito o yung nag-endorso nitong impeachment complaint ay sina Assistant Minority Leader at Camarines Representative Gabriel Bordado Jr. at si Deputy Minority Leader o Cartilage Representative Lex Anthony Chris Colada. Ilan nga yung mga pangunahing grounds na kanilang inilatag ay betrayal of public trust at culpable violation of the Constitution. Dahil nga din, katulad ng naunang 2 impeachment complaint na hinihain. Dahil umano nga dun sa pag-commit daw ng plunder o kaya malversation, graft, and corruption sa manumalya umanong paggasta nga ng 125 million confidential funds ng OVP noong 2022 at yung higit 112 million confidential funds naman ng DepEd noong 2023. Iginit din nila nga na nagkaroon daw ng bribery nga sa mga opisyal ng DepEd. Kung matatandaan ninyo, isinuwalat ng ilang DepEd officials na nakatanggap sila ng mga envelope na may lamang cash na nasa 12,000 hanggang 50,000 mula umano nga doon sa opisina noon yung kalihim at naniniwara na sila talaga na illegal nga yung disbursement o paggamit ng pondo ng base na rin yan doon sa mga lumabas na pagdinig ng House Committee on Good Government. Balik sa inyo.
Okay, man, at tingin ko, tanong ng maraming tao ngayon anong impact nito dun sa timetables? Kasi ang ilang iniintay na pagkatagal-tagal para umusad yung impeachment complaint para mai-transmit doon sa Justice Committee. So, ano ang timetable natin ngayon?
Yun nga, kasi di ba sinabi rin ni Secretary General, hindi na rin tayo ng update. Kamusta ba yung 2 naunang complaint na ipinasa nga nung naunang 2 grupo at sinasabi niya na bini-verify yun ng kanilang legal team. At ngayon naman, itong third complaint, dahil ngayong araw pinasa, yun naman yung undergoing pag-verify nila. At oras nga daw na matapos na ito, consolidate nila, ita-transmit or ipapadala na sa opisina ni Speaker Martin Romualdez. Pero di ba, naka-break na hanggang ngayong araw na lang.
Hanggang 20 lang yung recess na yung 20. Bukas recess na.
Sa January 13 na. Sa January 13 na nga lang magre-resume yung session ng Kongreso at doon pa natin malalaman kung na-transmit na ba sa opisina ni Speaker Martin.
So Man, I'm sure it's not lost on them, on sa mga nag-file ng impeachment complaint nito na medyo physically impossible in terms of time, di ba? So, what's their point? Or hindi nila alam na medyo malabo na given the time constraints?
Umaasa pa rin sila. Katulad ng mga naunang 2 na naghain ng complaint. Sila, di ba? Sina dating Senatora Laila de Lima, umaasa pa rin sila. Hindi yung kaninang pari, yung nakausap natin, si Father Joselito Sarabia, na isa sa mga nag-complaint. Sabi nga niya na, talaga naniniwala sila na may something illegal and immoral na kinumit na itong si Sara. And yung isa sa mga lawyers, sinabi na talagang may constitutional obligation. Hindi lang constitutional and legal obligation, kundi moral obligation to do so. So, umaasa sila na meron pa rin pagkakataon na ma-impeach nga. Itong si VP Sara.
Marian, ang dami-dami na yan. 3 complaint na yan. And there are so many articles of impeachment doon pa lang sa una.
Yung isa, 22.
Meron ka bang nakausap na kung sinong congressman na nagsasabi kung ano yung reasonable timetable na pwede nilang i-consolidate yan? Kasi nakita nyo naman, ang kapal-kapal niyang kahit siyang pangatlo Ilan-ilan lang yan, pero ang kapal-kapal din ng sinagbinta papeles. Mga gaano katagal kaya yon? Yung consolidation pa lang
Actually, kasi under doon sa rules ng House, dapat oras na kasi na matapos lang ma-verify nga nitong office ni Secretary General. Dapat maipadala to immediately dito sa opisina ni Speaker Martin Romualdez. We only have 10 session days para i-include ito, lahat ng complaints sa order of business. At saka doon naman, kailangan i-refer na agad sa Committee on Justice. They have 3 session days naman.
That's in the Constitution. Pero Bok, ito, babalikan ko lang.
Factor the consolidation o pwedeng sabay-sabay? Sabay-sabay i-refer.
Mukhang oo. Katapos sa committee na yan pag-uusapan, I think itatakil sa Committee on Justice. Kaya ang Committee on Justice, they have 60 session days naman para talakayin itong mga impeachment complaints. Kaya maalala ninyo, sinasabi ng good government, di ba, ni Chairman Joel Chua, bakit itinigil nyo na itong confidential funds? Di ba nagkaroon sila mga week or 2 weeks ago na tinatapos na nga nila ang pagdinig or pagtalakay sa good government ng anything about the confidential funds of the VP. Tinatanong natin bakit hindi pa nga maharap o naisasalang yung dalawang security officers, sina La Chica, kung nalala nyo, sina Nolasco. Di ba yun yung hinihintay natin, sabi ni Chua, meron naman ang magkakaroon, kumbaga, ng hearing impeachment complaint. So, doon daw yung tatalakayin. So, ipinauubayan na nila doon at syempre nga sa AFP investigation.
Marian, basahin ko lang yung calendar ng 19th Congress para may idea tayo kung gaano kakonting oras natin. Okay, December 21, Sabado, recess na yan. Ang resumption ng session, January 13 hanggang February 8. That's a total of, I counted 4 working weeks. That's not a lot.
Okay.
After February 8, adjourn na yan.
Campaign period
Campaign
for the Senate.
11.
For the Senate, February 11.
Tapos March
by
ang
March, Congress naman ang campaign period.
Tapos resume ang session, June 2, 2025.
Okay, and end of Congress is when?
June 30. Ay, hindi, ano pala? No,
Tama, June 30.
June 30, tama na, June 30.
End of Congress,
Tama.
June 30.
So,
So,
And
like
now,
4
this
weeks plus
Congress, tapos na.
so
Magkakaroon na
two
ng
months,
bagong
2
batch
months,
ng
no?
mga lawmaker.
More or less
Paano
2
Marian
months.
yung sinasabi nilang fast track mode? Wala nang pag-asa yun. Yung magagather na lang ng signatures, 103 or 106, whatever, ididiretso na sa plenary at pagbobotohan para maibato ka agad sa Senate. Wala na ba yun? Dead na yun?
Oo, wala pa tayo kasi wala. So far, wala nung mga nakalipas na linggo hanggang ngayong araw. Ngayong huling araw kasi bago mag-Christmas break. Pasok dito
Well,
sa
Ami, yung
Congress.
impeachment is
Wala
not really the
talaga.
problem, right? It's more like the trial.
Yes.
The trial. Okay, madali namang ma-impeach eh. Impeachment, by impeachment, we mean makasuhan. Makasuhan. Pero yung trial na kailangan
Parang
isagawa
indictment
lang
ng Senado, yun ang matatagalan. Siguro 2 months. Are we, it's possible to put
Yung
a
yung
Vice President on trial
yung
for 2
impeachment
months?
trial ni Corona was from January to May.
5 months.
May
Yeah,
siya
Pero
na
hindi election yun. That was not an
not
election,
an election
year.
year. And also, Boka, remember, that was the Chief Justice na maraming tao hindi nakaka-relate sa Chief Justice sa Supreme Court. Unlike ang VP, personalidad yan.
Pero blockbuster pa rin yun. Yung impeachment ni Corona. Marami pa rin tumutok sa TV noon sa
But can you
trial.
imagine if it's the VP?
Right. Oo, right. Even more. More so.
And a Duterte pa.
In an election season.
Oh.
Yun, medyo...
Versus the Chief Justice ng Supreme Court.
But I
Corona.
guess this impeachment complaints that are being filed, 3 of them in all, are more like a political statement. It's coming from civil society, from the left, so from church leaders. So I guess it's more of a political statement by these organizations. Ano? They want to send a message across siguro. Yun.
Kaya lang, lalong tumatagal nga eh, hindi ba? You have to consolidate eh. Kahit sabihin mong sabay-sabay na i-entertain yan, i-consolidate pa rin yan before you toss it to the Senate, if ever it will be tossed to the Senate. Para lang madali-dali yung buhay ng magta-trial.
Well, let's not forget,
pagdating sa
Ami, no?
Senado, if
The
we will go by what the senators are saying, meron ng mga naglilista, meron ng siyam na likely not to vote for her ouster.
Right. But let's not forget, Ami, the president himself has already come out in record publicly to say that he's not in favor of an
Yes.
impeachment. So let's see. Normally, historically, what the president says, sumusunod naman yung Kongreso, di ba? So let's see. We can infer na by not really rushing or acting on these complaints,
Pero sabi,
nakikinig sila sa presidente.
ang
ganun.
sabi ni Tito Ronald, also be careful there kasi there are, you also have to read between the lines.
Okay. Ano yung basa ni Ronald?
Dahil baka raw may ibang mensahe, iba yung mensahe sa taas, iba ang mensahe sa ilalim. But that's also presuming that our legislators can read between the lines. Hindi, kasi some people are more literal eh. Ako ay...
Regardless, Bok, wala nang oras.
Iba
Parang
yun.
gano'n.
Ibang usapan ba yun?
Yun lang yun, iba yun. Usapan pa rin ng oras. So, physics, di ba? Time, the question of time.
Physics napa-Einstein na tayo. Time slows the faster you go.
And by July next year, it's a new Congress. Right? It's a new Congress.
It's a new Congress.
It's a new Congress.
Teka, pinapalis tayo. Okay. It's time to go. Wala tayong guest today. Nag-goodbye naman tayo kay Marian. Marian, maraming salamat sa iyo. Thank you, Marian Enriquez.
Thank you, Marian.
News 5
Merry
correspondent.
Christmas. Bye-bye.
Okay, Ambok.
Thank you for joining the Storycon today. Ami Pamintuan, Editor-in-Chief of the Philippine Star.
Join us again tomorrow at 4 p.m. for the Storycon. I'm Ed Lingao.
I'm Patrick Paez, and we are One News, all sides, all the time. This is the Story Conference Group or the Storycon Group.